shouldn't have gumbo spoons without gumbos.
That's true.
We need that.
Oh.
Hey, Monique, this is ringing.
Okay, we want to answer.
I do.
That's IRS.
I'm not answering that.
Wait, where's the pickup on this? There we go. Hello? Hello?
Hi there. This is Krishna Balbanani from Treasury Department.
All right. Hi, Krishna. You are loud and clear.
Okay.
And we are just about to get started.
All right.
Scott, you have Treasury on the line right there with you.
Krishna, it's Scott Turner. How you doing, sir?
How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Sure. Well, let me just welcome everybody that's from out of town to Lafayette. We're thrilled to be able to host such a prestigious team of intellectuals, and more importantly, I know, and more importantly, folks that are driving the conversation as it relates to the opportunity zones and what it means for America. And so we're so thankful that they've included us as part of the listening tour, where we can kind of tell our story and they can glean from that some of the things that's working for us and some of the questions that we have that they can take back and figure out what next steps need to happen based on all these different conversations. And so from Lafayette, I just want to tell everyone thank you. Make sure to bring that message back for us. And I know that President Savoy would like to welcome everybody here to the university, so I'm going to turn it over to you, T-Joe.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me join with Joel in welcoming everyone to the campus. University is historically and continually looking at ways to partner with our community to make sure that we improve the livelihood, the economic development, and the opportunities for our citizens. And so we're full partners with not only Lafayette, but throughout Acadiana, along with South Louisiana Community College. We all are in the same business of improving the lives of our residents. And so we're pleased to host you. We're pleased to participate in this event. And the university happens to be in an opportunity zone, so we're looking for opportunities there as well. So thank you all very much for being here, and hopefully we'll have a productive day. Monique?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Savoy, President of the University of Louisiana, and thank you, Mayor President Robideau, for that welcome. I'm Monique Boulay, the CEO of the Acadiana Planning Commission, and we are a regional government agency honored to be working with many federal agencies on this initiative. As many of you know, we have designated opportunity zones in each of our 7 parishes and are working with each of them to develop out stakeholders, develop out projects, and project structures that can be marketed and sold to potential funders, both local and outside funding. And so we're excited. Today we have the White House and we have Scott Turner, who is going to facilitate the conversation today, and he is extraordinary. I said earlier, he can do in 5 minutes what takes us 3 months to do. He can bring us all from point A to point B to really understand the great potential of this tax incentive program. It is basically just a tax incentive program, but has great potential to really revitalize and bring new life into our most needed areas throughout the country. So I want to thank him. I want to thank the Department of Commerce, who is with us today, the Delta Regional Authority, and HUD also joined us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott and let him facilitate the rest of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Monique, and thank you, Mr. President and Mayor. We are so happy to be here, as I said earlier, as we were eating breakfast. And, you know, it's been an honor to join with stakeholders such as yourself. And from a high-level standpoint, the Opportunity Zone tool that we all are here gathered to talk about has offered us a tremendous opportunity, if you will, pun intended, to serve the people of this country. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, as you all know, produced what we call the Opportunity Zone. And the spirit behind this is what I like to talk about. the spirit behind the legislation and the spirit behind the council. Because from a technical standpoint, we could talk about the rules and the regulations, which we all must have a knowledge of, and we have our good colleague on the phone from the Treasury with us now. But I like to talk about the spirit behind it, because then it inspires us to action. It gives us what really the vision of the president and the administration and those who have worked on this so diligently, what this is all about. The question arose, what can we do with those, or what can we do for those inside of communities that have not seen investment in years? America is enjoying great prosperity as it is, but not every American citizen is enjoying this prosperity. And as true countrymen, we look for ways to serve those that have been underserved, or those that are in distressed communities, those communities that we now call opportunity zones, communities that have a high level of poverty, communities that have a high crime rate, communities that have a high unemployment rate, communities that have adults that a small percentage have actually graduated from high school, communities where investment of any kind has not been seen for decade upon decade, communities like many people in my family, my mother, my wife, and others came from. Some of you or your family may have grown up in communities such as this. Those are opportunity zones. 35 million Americans around the country live in what we call today opportunity zones. And so the legislation came forth and it created the tax incentive. I like to say, when you have capital gains, whether you sell $1,000 of stock or whether you sell a $100 million company, it doesn't matter. It's a capital gain. The government is going to require for you to pay tax on that capital gain. Are we all in agreement? So you can either pay the government and send it to the Treasury, right, which we all do. We all pay our taxes as law-abiding citizens. Or you can take this incentive, these capital gains, and you can put it inside of a qualified opportunity fund and invest along with the public investment to bring about revitalization in some of the country's most underserved communities. That's a good option to me. To have tax deferment, because you're going to pay one way or another, right? But now you can take this and you can invest it and you can win. You could do good by doing good. But we realize that it's going to take more than just private investment. It's also going to take public investment to partner together. And that's where the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council was created, made up of 14 federal agencies and 3 state and federal partners. One included the Delta Regional Authority, which we have my colleague Chris here from. And with this, we streamline and coordinate and target resources inside of qualified opportunity zones, projects inside opportunity zones. For instance, the Department of Justice has about 55 programs that they have identified to bring about priority inside of opportunity zones for mentoring or gang remediation for children that used to be in gangs, and now there's a mentoring project inside of an opportunity zone that's priority given. The Department of Transportation, Department of the Interior, Health and Human Services, SBA, right? They're all a part of the council, have identified priorities or programs to give preference to projects inside of opportunity zones. That's where the public investment comes from. The public partnership comes from. So what is the spirit? The spirit is economic development, but also community development. The spirit is not just brick and mortar real estate projects. We've seen that in America in times past. Historically, we've seen revitalization. We've seen development. But now you have not only the development, you not only have the operating businesses, but now you have the community development, the social impact. And that's why this is not a government program. This is not another check the box program that is government led. This is an initiative. It's a mission, if you will, that is federally facilitated, but privately led, locally driven. That's the beauty of this. And now you have these conveners across the country per the executive order. Faith leaders, education leaders, community leaders, business leaders, developers, entrepreneurs coming together, sitting at the same table, the same room, having those hard conversations. What is the pain in my community? My community's been the same for 30 years. That's the pain. And then you have others say, but what is the potential? Historically, these conversations haven't happened. Yes, you'll have the developers and the entrepreneurs and the money people sitting in the same room to build, and we are grateful, we're thankful, we need that. But now you add the faith leaders who have the heartbeat of the community. You have the education leaders who have the workforce or the generation of workforce that's coming. And then you have the community leaders, those that have been literally sitting on the front porch for 30 years, watching kids come and go, seeing what's good and what's bad in the community. They're at the table now. Are y'all following me? That's the uniqueness of this initiative. That's the beauty of this. This is an unprecedented time because of the capital gains, but also because of the buy-in, not just from the public, but from the federal side, and then the conversations and the convenings that are happening. People, we have seen those who have never worked together, those who have never been on the other side of the tracks. They haven't talked together, they haven't worked together, they haven't convened together. Now we're in the same room. That's America. And the last thing I'll say is this. The vision of this is that long after we're gone, this will have a generational impact on those that come behind us. That's why it's not easy. This is a hard initiative, but it's simple when you understand the spirit and the vision and the unity of working together. When I wake up in the morning, I'm in my quiet time and I'm praying before the Lord. I say, Lord, how can I best utilize this tool to make a generational impact for those that are coming behind me and bring the right people in the room at the right time so that I may do so? Well, here we are. I left everything on the private side to come do this because I believe it's not the position, it's the purpose. That's why we're all here. Would you agree? And so I'm going to be quiet. But do we understand what the spirit is? Do we understand what the mission is? The council is made up of those 5 work streams. We understand the capital incentive, the capital gains incentive. We understand the public investment part. And so now the discussion will move to we have Dr. John Fleming from EDA to talk to you. We have Ty from HUD, and then we have Chris Caldwell from Delta Regional Authority to give a brief talk of what they do and what they provide as we move forward. Then we'll open it up. Is that okay? For discussion and for questions. Everybody all right with that? Okay, Dr. Fleming, please, sir.
Well, thank you. And if my name is familiar to you, I was your congressman for 8 years, from 2009 to 2017, serving the 4th District. Which drops well into Acadiana, actually, included Evangeline Parish. So because I do get asked, don't I know you from someplace? That's apparently where you know me from. So anyway, it's been a great opportunity for me to lead. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, leading EDA. And I want to thank you, especially Scott Turner today, and Melanie for inviting us. We've been part of their traveling roadshow for the last couple of weeks. We were in Lubbock first with them, then we spent all week last week in Ohio, and then of course this week in Acadiana. And I certainly appreciate that. Let me just tell you a little bit about EDA and why EDA is important in the Opportunity Zone discussion. EDA was stood up in 1965. We are a grant program designed to stimulate the economies throughout the nation relative to blighted communities, low income, high unemployment. So if you think about it, our mission is exactly the same as the purpose of Opportunity Zone legislation. We work differently than most other agencies in the federal government. We are a bottom-up design agency. What do I mean by that? We have 391 economic development districts. 90% of the country is in a district or another. And these districts are actually run by folks like Monique, for instance, who is not on our payroll but works with us in a partnership. And then we have 6 regional offices. Each regional office has folks who serve as economic development representatives. Jason, where are you, Jason? Jason's real popular. Get his card. He represents Louisiana, and in fact is new on the job as being an EDR for Louisiana, moving to Covington. So you can trap him there anytime you need to. And then, of course, we have George, who leads our efforts there in Austin, our Austin regional office. We have 6 regional offices. So as you can see, the applications are made locally. We are boots on the ground. We understand what is happening in your community economically. That's what we're all about. The decision's not made in Washington. We don't airdrop money for the purpose of economic development. We work with you. We want to know that you have skin in the game. Whenever we do an award, you have to match that. And then on top of that is private capital investment. And if you do a look back over all the years, we have a history of every federal taxpayer dollar that's invested, we get $15 of private capital investment. So that's huge. That's important. That's why we've been successful over the years, is because really we let you make the decisions. We want you, the entrepreneurs, and certainly our community partners, because we can't make those decisions wisely from Washington. So now that we have opportunity zones, we have a new tool in the toolbox. So instead of 15-to-1 ratio, we should expect 30-to-1, 50-to-1, 1,000-to-1. Why not? Because now we have new incentives. So what are these incentives? And they're very simple. I like to say that opportunity zones are 401ks on steroids. Because what it does is delay taxation on the capital, as Scott says. When you sell that asset, regardless of where you put that decimal point, where it's 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, or a million, you're going to pay about 15 to 20% tax immediately on that, and you'll never be able to get a return on investment on that part of it that is sent to Washington. Well, under opportunity zones, you hold that. The taxation does not occur until you get ready. And so if you hold it for 5 years in a QOF, Qualified Opportunity Fund, you're going to delay taxation by 5 years, and you'll get a 10% discount on the taxes you do pay if you liquidate at that point. If you hold it 7 to 10 years, that goes to 15% of a discount. If you hold it a full 10 years, you keep that 15% discount, and all the money you made over that 10 years is non-taxable money. So it's a great opportunity, and not only is it a financial return on investment, but it's a social return on investment.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. You can do good and do well at the same time.
That's right.
And that's what we're looking for. So I just want to point out investments we've already made here. For instance, this university is one of our university centers. We have around 50 at any one time, and ULL is one of them. We've invested $1.7 million here in Lafayette to build the capacity, provide technical assistance, and support locally driven economic development strategies. It's helped spur $800,000 in private investment and nearly 50 jobs. And I haven't mentioned jobs, but that's what it's all about, folks, is having jobs. We've been losing population in Louisiana. You know that. We want to keep our young people, and we have to have jobs for that to happen. In summary, just to say that our job is to help make these opportunity zones work. In fact, it's a criteria. It is a new criteria for application. That is to say, if you didn't qualify in your application before, if it's an opportunity zone, you automatically qualify. It doesn't mean it gets funded or chosen. It still is a competitive process, but it has a good chance. And now it's also a priority as well. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things are important. And we have two other things that's important to offer. We have an integrator function. So if you have an application that for us to provide a grant, if it doesn't quite fit what we do, we can help you with HUD or USDA or whomever that it might be a better fit for. GAO and Congress has required us to do that. The other function is just coordination, to work with you to make sure these investments work well. So anyway, it's great to be with you here today, and we encourage you to reach out. We're happy to support your community in assisting in an opportunity zone investment.
Yes, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Scott.
Dr. Furman. Appreciate that. Chris, you want to
Right.
say a few things?
So thankful to be here today. Monique, thank you and your team for this great 2 days. And really excited to be here, especially to see so many of you from elective offices represented, especially our federal delegation, Jay with Senator Kennedy and Drew, Senator Cassidy, and I think half of Congressman Higgins' office. Is anybody back in the district office? Sarah, everybody, it was great to meet y'all. Then, of course, Jensen with Congressman Abraham's office, who are all great supporters of the Delta Regional Authority. You know, we, if you look across our footprint in Delta Regional Authority, the 8 states, 252 counties and parishes, they all suffer, by and large, most of all those counties, with the exception of, less than 10% of those counties are on a distress list of some sort, a generational poverty. And as Scott mentioned, and our mission when we first met, and Scott has led the charge of this, of all of our agencies coming together, and in my opinion, in my career in public service, the greatest example of federal cooperativism I've ever seen, to find ways that we can take what Congress gave us and the president signed and remove our red tape to get out of the way, to allow private dollars and public entities like this to come in and have less obstacle. I think we're over 132 and growing specific programs and regulations that we have come through our group of 17. At DRA, we have prioritized across the board of all of our programs, our grant programs that we have, and even into our partnerships we have with EDA, Department of Labor, and USDA in our programs that have prioritized. We announced yesterday the $119,000 grant that the Delta Regional Authorities made to APC here to build out a prospectus for the 7 parishes to help bridge that gap between funds and investors and the local governments. But I see this as Scott said, is the federal government, Congress have all stepped up and said, here's this, and you've got to have a local initiative and local strategy, hence the prospectus that we're working with APC on building, or that Monique and her team are building. We're just cutting a check for it, so get out of the way because y'all know best. But that local strategy is going to be the difference maker in the success of these OZs in these parishes. But I personally believe that this is the greatest opportunity to end and change the trajectory of the generational poverty and the level of distressed areas in this footprint that has ever happened. This, I believe, will go down as a signature piece of the 2017 tax bill. I think it's the sleeper that will pop out, that will have more impact on ending the cycle of generational poverty that we all know too well. I don't know, Mr. President, I'm sure that y'all have many studies where you pull the impact that this campus has right here. I'm sure it's greater than just APC. But I know that you in this room probably know more about the level of generational poverty that touches this part of the state. This is the single most, probably in the history of our nation, opportunity, or greatest opportunity, for private capital investment to go into the underserved and underutilized areas of our country. So that's what I'm the most excited about, and then in being able to have the power, thanks to the President and Secretary Carson and Scott, to come in and work with other agencies to literally cut red tape and to empower our toolkit to be able to be used more broadly to help you accomplish this goal. So I'm as excited as him. I'm just not as eloquent or as passionate about it. But it really had to be here. And then again, just hats off to Monique and her team, because And I can't remember, I think it's 45 or 47 different planning districts that I have across my footprint. And y'all should be very proud here. APC is one of their applications and their process and their team is top notch, bar none. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that, sir. Ty, you want to say anything?
Yeah,
And then we'll open it up for questions.
So I'm Ty Petty. I'm with HUD, the Regional Field Office, Region 6 over in Fort Worth. I've had the opportunity to meet with many of you last time I was in town, and it's good to see many familiar faces. Real quick, I probably should have told you beforehand, Scott, but I think it's important to share how this meeting came to be, because it highlights what you're talking about, how this is driven from the ground up. It's about the community. And so how we came to be in Lafayette today is my best friend is from Lafayette, and I was having dinner with his family, and his mother asked me what I'm working on. I told her about opportunity zones, and she lives here in Lafayette, and she said, "Oh, we've heard about opportunity zones in Lafayette. You need to talk to someone." And she connected me with Chad and Monique's team, and that's what got the ball rolling on this. And so it was just a concerned citizen in Lafayette brought what they were doing here to me at HUD, and then that's why we're here today. So I think that's beautiful, and then that kind of segues in to highlight what HUD's role is. HUD's role is to be a facilitator. We've been active and been on the ground in many of the communities that are opportunity zones. If you look at our customers and our property portfolio, there's a direct correlation between many opportunity zones and where HUD is. For what our contribution in it is HUD is attached preference points to grant applications that are located in opportunity zones, as well as we provide breaks in interest and fees for FHA loans. That's the main things that we can contribute that. But I'm really excited about the unity of effort in Lafayette and all the collaboration and working together that's going on out here. The level of community buy-in from the grassroots in the neighborhoods on up to your elected officials is beautiful, and I'm really excited to see how all that goes. And I'm just looking forward to helping facilitate more meetings or anything that we need going forward in our role here at HUD.
Thank you, Ty. Appreciate it. Monique, we can open up for questions or discussion. However y'all want to do it. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
Treasury.
yeah. Christian, are you still here?
I'm still here, sir.
Okay, perfect. We're going to open it up for discussion and questions now.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Pilar Ebley. I work here at UL Lafayette. I just have a question for the federal delegation. What are some of the more unique or creative projects that have come to your attention? Maybe they're not in full fruition yet, but just to kind of spark ideas for our community.
Great question. So we have, just for your knowledge base, this is our 14th week on the road after being appointed by President Trump, and we've been to 25 cities, and every city is different. Every project is different, but I have seen some of the most creative, innovative things happening inside of the opportunity zones. One in particular is on the west side of Atlanta. They are a couple of developers there that are taking projects, if you will, housing projects on the west side and renovating them and rehabbing them into mixed-use housing and affordable housing, as well as market rate, but affordable market rate housing. But the unique part of this is there's open land in these housing projects that they've turned into farms where they produce vegetables and produce, if you will, for the residents of that project. The residents come in and they work with the resident farmer, and they cultivate the land, and they receive the produce for their families. But it gets the kids involved, it gets the parents involved, and it gets the community involved in a place where there has been historically violence, crime, and now they're all working to preserve the farm of which they partake of. And I thought that was very unique because it's good for the retention of the residents, it's good for the community building, the partnership of the residents, so that's one. In Arizona, in particular in Phoenix and Mesa, and this is good for the university, Arizona State has partnered with Phoenix and Mesa, with the mayors in those cities, with a local developer to build work incubators, to build a innovation center, a art center, to build student housing, to renovate the downtown area of Phoenix and of Mesa, keeping the historic architecture and fashion of which, is so attractive. That has been very unique. In Cleveland, in the Tremont area, that's northeast Cleveland, northeast side. Sorry. I was just there for the second time. But anyway, when we went there a few months ago, there was a vacant piece of land, about 2 acres, if you will. On one side was an old garage or gas station. On the other side was just a vacant lot. Across the street, and both of these in opportunity zones, it was a factory. They first took this factory and started using it to build out workforce training. Across the street on the vacant lot, they're now building a bakery on the corner and workforce housing on the backside of it, right? And so you have a new operating business, a bakery, and we were just there, and so there's pillars up, there's concrete up, they're moving, there's hard hats. And so now you have a new business inside of the Tremont area that will employ people, workforce training across the street that will train people in skill sets, and then workforce housing on the same land. And so there's a whole ecosystem that's built out. Those are good examples for you. Okay, I have some more, but we'll talk about it later. So, and I say all that to say to you all, this is not just a concept. These projects are reality. In Brookville, Indiana, 2,662 people is the population. A family there had a business. They sold the business. Now they have capital gains. They were encouraged, hey, go on a vacation for a year or two. You've worked hard for 50 years. You sold your business to a student. They said no. The brother-in-law comes and said, hey, there's this tool called Opportunity Zones. Very soon after that, they went to the bank to open up a qualified opportunity fund. Now in Brookville, Indiana, this family has created 3 Opportunity Zone projects in a town that only has 2,662 people, 45 new jobs. I say that to encourage you. Because if you're willing, it's possible. The tool is here to be creative and to be innovative. A lot of people have a wait and see concept and idea. Some has, watch me, and I'm going to show you how this can work, and that's what we're seeing. Any more questions? Okay. Hold on right quick. We got one right before you. We got one right here.
Thank you, and Mr. Turner, we talked about this earlier, and it goes to Mr. Caldwell's point. Louisiana is 49th in this country in terms of public education. We change generational poverty by education. You can bring jobs here, but if they are not skilled, you don't have the people to fill those jobs. So I don't know if there's some consideration around additional workforce training help associated with opportunity zones. But in the current landscape, and I guess it's kind of fortunate we have some folks here from federal offices, second chance Pell for a state that has over-incarcerated individuals for generations would be huge. So that is Pell for people who were previously incarcerated. Anything that you all can do to support that would be huge. And secondly, the Jobs Act, which you're probably pretty familiar with. But again, that is looking at providing funding for short-term non-credit training. So if you have somebody that wants to be a welder and they can't go during the day, they can go at night and earn their certifications, but there's no financial aid for those folks right now. And in our state, that low educational attainment rate gets stuck because people are working. They have car payments, they have kids, it's hard to stop and go to school. So I would say, the Second Chance Pell and the Jobs Act are 2 key pieces of legislation that would make a huge difference in Louisiana.
Yes, ma'am. So to that point on the workforce, back in May, early June, DRA, in partnership with the Department of Labor and Appalachian Regional Commission, our sister agencies, that is also a member of the council, we announced a $30 million workforce development grant that is retooling some existing money that in an old program at Department of Labor to partner with us. And I believe when these folks were at our listening session, our workshop we held in Baton Rouge in June or July about this grant. It was a really short turnaround this year. By the time all the lawyers got everything inked out between 3 agencies and $30 million, The first round has closed of this grant, but basically, hey, we prioritized opportunity zone workforce programs, and here's what we're looking for to address that is industry-led workforce, okay? And so there are several examples I can point to you of university and community college systems partnering with industry in their area directly to address what you're talking about, learning while they earn, on-the-job training and skills in welding, in coding, in plumbing, HVAC, across the board. I mean, the president has made very clear, and as well as we have this skills gap, okay? And the demand for this skills has made overlook a lot of our previously incarcerated personnel, and is DOJ and even, I mean, the Department of Energy has reached out to this community, I mean, through the Jobs Act. But let's say all this say is, yes, we are prioritizing specifically in workforce development. In workforce development, a lot of people slap that label on a whole lot of grant applications because I see it all. And it might be, you know, I think I saw one not long ago that was to put air conditioning in a building was somehow workforce development, and that gets caught all. And what my focus is, workforce development is developing the workforce, and not, you know, I've had applications or requested for retail services, to train people retail services. No, I want a hardened skill, because that, and you're right, I mean, you're absolutely right. If you give a person a skill, it's much different than giving them a job. And not very long ago, I was at the Shelby County Prison Farm in Memphis. And I went through a program there that a nonprofit had started and had brought together a bunch of concrete masons and carpentry masons, and they were working towards plumbing and electrical. But they were taking guys that were about 90 days out, okay, and putting them in these programs. And so there was a contractor that was there, a very large concrete contractor in Memphis. I mean, huge. This is, you know, about 400 or 500 employees. And his head of HR was in this prison with me. And they were having a competition, these guys laying bricks and doing concrete work. And at the end, she said, here's the deal. I'll hire every one of you. And I'll start you at $20 an hour. And you make it through your probation period, you're going to be at $22.50 an hour. And said, and you'll have a skill. And so after we were done with this, you know, very moving experience for me, she said, I asked her, I said, have you hired many out here? She said, yes. She said, you know, we've hired, it's a new program, we've hired a dozen or so, one's not worked out. And she said, but here's the change that happens in a man's heart when he comes out of prison is he has a skill. And that's different than having a job. And the same thing goes with somebody stuck in generational poverty. And you show them a skill, that's something that you're not going to take away from them. And that's something they have marketable. And their mindset changes, okay? And I believe that this what we're doing here has to change that mindset of people. And so, long way of saying yes. And that program has closed for this FY because we've got to, you know, we're coming up on the end of the year. But we have another $30 million already appropriated through that program that will be available next year, and we'll see in September. But hopefully, ask your fellow delegation, that money will be reallocated again at Department of Labor for the coming FY as well. So we've got this FY18 that we're closing out, FY19 is already there, and then hopefully we'll have a round 3 of that coming up.
And I'll connect you with the Department of Energy, because they have reentry initiatives that they're doing right now. And so after the meeting, make sure that Melanie and I connect with you, and we'll connect you to Director Campos because they concentrate on reentry and workforce, okay? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Mandy Mitchell, Louisiana Economic Development. Our state agency had the privilege of designating on behalf of Governor Edwards the 150 census tracts that have been selected as Louisiana's opportunity zones. And so we went through a very thoughtful and deliberate process to whittle down 597 eligible low-income communities for that purpose. And I want to thank you all for being here today Mr. Turner and Congressman Fleming and our friends from DRA and HUD, and for shining a light on what Acadiana is doing. As we looked across the state, I can say without a doubt that Acadiana, from day one, this region has been at the forefront and has been the most proactive when it comes to taking advantage of opportunity zones and educating our local community leaders as it pertains to what opportunity zones is. And Dr. Harder actually stole my question. Great minds think alike. And what I want to do is share. I want to share why I was going to ask that same question about resources for workforce development. So in Louisiana's opportunity zones, the poverty rate on average, the poverty concentration is 32% as compared to the rest of the state is 20%. Bachelor's degree attainment in Louisiana's opportunity zones is 15%, only 15% as compared to the state level, which is 23%. And this is most important. Adults not working in Louisiana's opportunity zones is about 41%. Wow. And so I was going to ask that question about the workforce resources from a workforce standpoint. And the Louisiana opportunity zones, there are about 542,000 citizens in our state that are covered by the 150 census tracts that were selected. So thank you for that very robust response on what federal resources will be available to help us with workforce development, because our job at LED is to bring jobs and economic opportunity, but we also have to train our individuals and provide them with the skills they need. And if I may, I talked to Monique about this morning. I just wanted to share for our local leaders that are here things that the state is doing to help to help raise awareness of Louisiana's opportunity zones. We have to compete with 8,700 census tracts across the U.S., and we have 150, and we want to differentiate those. So LED, on behalf of the state, is investing in an online interactive portal where investors can come and review opportunity zones projects that are seeking investment. That's the Opportunity Exchange. We are launching that website on August 12th. And then we are partnering with KPMG to host 3 workshops on opportunity zones that are geared specifically towards local economic development, community development leaders, and investors, so bankers and equity investment firms, et cetera. That will be hosted August 13th in Ruston, August 14th in Alexandria, and August 15th in Baton Rouge. Those are LED KPMG hosted workshops. And then at the state level, LED amended the restoration tax abatement incentive to expand it to include opportunity zones program. What that RTA abatement does, it allows for individuals or businesses that are investing in bringing back into commerce blighted or dilapidated properties. It allows for up to a 10-year property tax abatement. Well, that was limited to historic districts, economic development districts, and downtown districts. We expanded that to include any structures within an opportunity zone. We just passed that bill this past session. And then lastly, I think it's been said already, but I want to emphasize any federal or state existing tax incentive today can be stacked with opportunity zones. And that's where it's important for economic development, because we don't want to see investments just in land and building and real estate that'll sit there. We want to see the jobs coming to our communities. And so the research and development tax credit, the angel investor tax credit, new markets tax credits, enterprise zones, quality jobs, all of these existing state incentives are stackable with opportunity zones. And there are a couple other things we're doing, but I don't want to hog all the time. I just wanted it for our local leaders, while I have this opportunity, I would be remiss and I would be in trouble with Governor Edwards and Secretary Don Pearson if I didn't share that information with y'all.
Okay, thank you. And so for the workforce that you were speaking of, one of the work streams inside of the council is the Labor and Workforce Development. And that is led by the Department of Interior and the Department of Education. And so projects that are done inside of opportunity zones that have to do with workforce development, that's one of the levers that you can compete for as it pertains to grants from the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, because that is one of the 5 work streams of the council. And so things like business incubators, workforce training projects, that work stream is where you would go, as these things roll out. And so there's obviously the private capital, but there's also the public investment that can enhance that. And I'm so glad you talked about the legislation that was passed, to give the 10-year tax abatement to projects that rehab blighted properties inside of opportunity zones. That's a great incentive, for builders and developers and business people to come in. And that's what we've seen across the country from different states that are conforming to the tax incentive or conforming to the legislation to attract investment or to attract local business people, to build businesses here, to rehab or to revamp business. So that's very, very encouraging. And August the 12th, did everybody write that down for the website? Because that's what investors do. They look and they search what's going on in Louisiana, what's going on in this state. And to have that portal is part of the process where people can find out what you're doing. And you said something about stacked financing. Kristen, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we're talking about stacked financing on top of opportunity zone, qualified opportunity funding. Do you want to speak just a little bit about that and what that could look like so people can have an understanding that you can use historic tax credits, new market tax credits, along with qualified opportunity funds to build out projects? Can you speak to that for us right quick?
Sure, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing in the statute or regulations that prohibits the application of any other laws, statute, programs that are out there. So, and we purposefully made it that way to make sure that any of the benefits that the government's made available continue to apply. The only thing that the regulations really get into is, the definitions around the statutory terms, but there's really no prohibition if you otherwise qualify under new markets or rehab credit or LIHTC or any of the other provisions that are out there. If all of the provisions apply in their own right, they all apply.
Great. And does everybody understand that? And so when you're talking to developers or you're talking to business people or you're talking to funds, there's nothing that precludes or prohibits stacked financing, which, the opportunity fund financing, it fills the gap, but sometimes it may not be the whole part. And so that's the flexibility, as Christian said, of this tool. Does everybody understand that? All right. Thank you, Christian. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Sean Wilson, Secretary for the Department of Transportation and Development. I hate following Mandy because she stacks things and I stack traffic, and people get very upset with that. But I have a encouraging question I would suggest to the panel. State Departments of Transportation, whether here or other places, have tremendous backlog, and infrastructure ties very well with investment, whether it's residential investment, commercial development, educational facilities, access. So a lot of the opportunity zones fit well within the scope of where we have projects.
Right.
Unfortunately, with the backlog that we see with gas taxes and the revenue and the project development for infrastructure, we may not be able to move as quickly with our resources except for discretionary funds. And so the discretionary funds that we deal with are infra grants, bill grants, other things through the USDOT, maybe the Army Corps, some other areas that we see some dollars. And I would encourage the federal panelists here to work very closely with other agencies to hopefully prioritize where you have opportunity zones overlapping with local applications. While the state may not pick and choose winners, we support all of our communities, but where you have that real synergy and magic that will sustain that investment, whether it's hard infrastructure or transit opportunities or technology and closing the digital divide for rural communities, that's hugely valuable for us, because if we can get broadband out to some of the rural parts of our country using public right-of-way and infrastructure, that will allow businesses to compete on a more global scale or a national scale. And so my suggestion and request would be where you have competitive opportunities in the various silos of the federal government, and states are submitting to them and trying to find that, I might be able to contribute a little bit to it. And someone else, whether it's DRA, if it's in the Delta of Louisiana or some of these surrounding Acadiana parishes, we could work together to really leverage that, but we need to see it scored and rewarded where you have that synergy. So that would be my comment.
So thank you, Mr. Secretary. And the Department of Transportation is very much involved as it pertains to the council and opportunity zones. And I met with them probably 30 or 45 days ago, and they are identifying those programs and loans, the low interest rate loans and other, so that they can prioritize projects inside of opportunity zone, transit projects, be it bus, be it railway, be it metro. And so thank you for bringing that up. But they are very much involved and working right now to see how they can join in with state and with projects to increase those investments inside of opportunity zone as it pertains to transportation.
Well, and just as a follow-up, the benefit of stretching that time out so that states can participate, engage helps, because I might be able to speak to what I can contribute 3 years from now, but in that competitive window, there's always this passion for shovel ready, and I get it, but I might not be shovel ready on that project because of where we were 3 years ago. But in 3 years, I'll have my dollars. And so where we can stretch that window out for that investment in terms of a real project development path, that helps.
Thank you.
If I could also add, at EDA, we make quite a few investments in transportation infrastructure. Just one example recently, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Regions Bank wanted to build or expand a call center there, but it was out a little bit outside of town, and it was a county road, and it really was not in good shape. So we invested $1 million to rebuild that road. So that's really what we do is grease the skid, so to speak, move those infrastructure barriers out of the way. Broadband is another area that we're very much interested in as well. And also this would be a good point to plug our ICEDs, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies. All 391 EDDs have one, and we're updating those to include opportunity zones. Why is that important? Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So it's important that whether it's APC in Monique or any other economic development area, that you have a comprehensive interlocking strategy that's regional in nature and involves not just one town but communities around, so that all of these pieces of the puzzle can fit together in uniformity.
And I will follow up on that in that we did put a sets together back in 2016. I think we had a big region-wide SWAT, and in there we prioritized the development of our hubs and our downtowns, our main streets, but without any real capacity or tools to do a whole lot with that priority. We all know they all need a new injection. So when this program came up, that was immediately where our mind went. We knew we had the priority, but it was an opportunity, and we had Abbeville, Opelousas, Brobridge, Ville Platte, Eunice, Church Point, and the core of Lafayette designated. So now we have this regional strategy to really inject new energy into our hubs, our main streets, and our downtowns. So it really did come out of that SEDS process that we work with the commerce on. So
50% of all of my state grant dollars by congressional statute are spent in infrastructure, basic public or transportation. I think currently we've got a transportation infrastructure project up in Evangeline right now at a rail spur that we're doing.
Yes.
In one of the unique things at DRA is you're thinking about these, and if you see these that were a community's part or match is on the road project, they're going to EDA. We can provide that match. We have a MOU. DRA is unique in that way, is that our dollars can be part of the non-federal match. So and again, we put priorities on us, especially, I mean, and when we're looking at the TI, to kind of echo Dr. Kennedy, is we are looking at economic development tied to that, as opposed to just regular surface and residential, but and which plays well into the opportunity zones of what we're trying to do here and create economic growth. So that would, I mean, besides the other priority points that we're giving to those OZs, it even aligns with our federal mandate even better.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Conrad Tomo, Lafayette Parish Assessor.
Hello, sir.
Thank you for being here. I'd like for the panel to address a little bit about sustainability of projects, because I can't think of anything worse than going into an underserved community, doing something today, and not following through with that, and in 5 years, it's right back where it began. What is the thinking on sustainability of these projects is from the federal government level?
Right.
Is there continued funding down the road that's possible, or how do you envision sustainability of these projects?
So I can speak to that.
Okay.
And when I talk about the spirit of the law, long-term sustainability is a big part of that. And that's where the 10-year hold, if you will, of capital gains inside of qualified opportunity funds. Because for decades, investment hasn't been made. And this is, if you follow me, this is a different paradigm of thinking and a different way of investing. Because now investors are encouraged to not only have the tax deferment benefit, but to invest inside the qualified opportunity fund in the opportunity zone project for long-term sustainability, hence the 10-year hold. Because we figure in 10 years, what can be done in 5 or 3 years is so much different than what can be done in 10. And that's where that concept comes from. That's where the long-term sustainability comes from. That's where the workforce training comes from. That's where the training and skill sets come from, not just giving jobs or creating jobs, but giving a skill that can last for a lifetime and encouraging entrepreneurship. So we have wealth creation. So we have the passing on of wealth. So we have home ownership. And that's where the idea or the spirit of long-term sustainability is coming from. Historically, we've seen development and sell and go. This is a different mindset, if you will, a different way of thinking and so it takes a thought process that's different because now you literally have to think long term. And the beauty that I've seen is people coming together and thinking about, okay, we've been here for so long, so how do we not only leave from the place we are, but how do we get that to last, as I said before, long after the initiative is done, the process is done, long after we're gone, how do we do that? And that's not easy, but it's being done. There is a couple of projects in St. Louis, and they're bigger projects. They're going to have a 5 to 7 year build out. That's how long it's going to take to build them out. But the vision is of the guys who are developing these is, after I'm gone, this will thrive. And that's why it's going to take that long to build it out. When you see new businesses starting up that have seed money from qualified opportunity funds, from local banks, from local investors, from tax credit, they've been done with the mindset of long-term sustainability. When you have the SBA that comes in and partners and gives seed, this is long-term sustainability. And I guess my point to you is the long-term sustainability is the mindset. Generational impact is the mindset. And so things that are being created with that in mind. Does that make sense to you? Does everybody understand that? So it's a different way of thinking, but that's the spirit of it.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
No pressure. I'm Allison Saunders. I'm the Tax Incentives Director for the Louisiana Division of Historic Preservation. We're within the Lieutenant Governor's Office, and I'm excited to be a part of this. We've, been attending a lot of these meetings just to see kind of where we fit in and what we can do to help. We find that fully half of our projects that we work on here in the state of Louisiana that are historic rehab tax credit projects are $500,000 projects or less. So that it truly is a Main Street program. And I just kind of ran some quick numbers, and I see that 80 out of 143 projects that we've had come in since the opportunity zones were declared here in Louisiana are located within opportunity zones. So it really does marry our initiative, and we find that, you know, directing this investment to the historic cores are also these economically depressed areas. And so I do understand that this is an initiative that does have an expiration date. And what we're looking for as an agency is how can we help show the benefit of this program? Like, I give you this statistic and this number, but how can we show the continued impact so that this program can get extended, the initiative can get extended and even expanded?
And I think that's, you know, where we talk about locally led, you know, from the mayor's office to state to leadership. That's the beauty and the flexibility of this tool, is that you have that opportunity to be creative so that it is sustainable on a local level. Does that make sense? And so, and you already answered it. But that is, and that's what we want. We want it to be something where you take this toolbox and you build for the long term. And the flexibility is there. The rules and the regulations are such that they allow you to do so. For long-term sustainability. And so really, I don't have anything else to offer to what you said, but I'm in agreement with you, right? Christian, do you have anything to add to that about the long-term sustainability?
You know, I think the one thing I can say is that, you know, there's some uncertainty in how this provision applies for investments after 10 years. And we had, in October, in our proposal, put out that, you know, the investors can stay in and are encouraged to essentially stay in until 2047, you know, 20 some odd years out from today.
Right.
To make sure that these are long-term investments in these zones.
Right. Good. Thank you, Chris.
Add something on that sustainability.
Yes.
The reason why this will be really qualifying for sustainability is because the risk is being shifted from government to the investors. I mean, if you look across America, when you see successful investment, successful businesses, whether it's Google or whatever, it's because the risk is that of the investor, the business owner. People are wealthy. People who are wealthy generally are pretty smart, or they wouldn't be wealthy, right? What is it about separating a fool from their money? That's often the case in this. We've learned through EDA, again, we've been up since 1965. We do look-backs. We actually do metrics on our investments. Mainly at 3, 6, and 9 years. And we consistently meet our goals. We're getting that 15 to 1 return on investment. So why would this be sustainable? Well, for an investor, there has to be value in this. Either there's going to be constant cash flow or appreciation throughout the investment. And these people are no fools. They're not going to put their money in unless there's something at the end for them. So I think that's the difference. This is not just another federal program where we airdrop money onto projects that never have a chance of surviving or being sustainable. And so I think this is very unique. But it is a public-private partnership, so we do have to work together to make this successful. And I do think that Congress will renew, extend, and expand this if it is successful. If it fails, it'll go away.
I'd like to chime in. I think that the big difference in this program is you're building an ecosystem. You know, in government, we tend to think of things in very linear terms as far as there's program, there's implementation, and then there's result. But with this, we're not in a straight line. We're building an ecosystem. And so it's important from our perspective to be creative, but also on the community level to be creative, not only in how you layer incentives, but how you leverage programs. And so as I was sitting here listening and thinking like about the workforce development question, it came to my mind at HUD, we have a program called Section 3, which provides job training and job opportunities for people that are receiving HUD financial assistance, right? And so there's some credits there and some training available. And then, you could couple that with WIOA credits and things like that, and then your organization could provide the training using the funding from those programs. But by doing that, we're using these linear programs, but we're creating an ecosystem. And now you've started a small business in a community or maybe in an opportunity zone, and that gives it the opportunity to cascade and grow using these linear programs. And I'm happy to talk with you more online about Section 3 and kind of how that relates to WIOA if you'd like as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Scott, I understood Allison's question just a little bit different, and so if you could just address one piece, I think it would be important for everyone here. The opportunity exists for how long? When do these decisions and these investors have until to be able to get these funds open and invested in? And then, depending on what that answer is, what Dr. Fleming had said, I guess, depending on the success of the program or the initiative will determine if Congress then decides to extend anything. But what's, just for those to know here that this isn't available to you for the rest of your life, and
Right.
it's opportunity zones forever, and you're covered. So there is some timelines there. So if you could just touch on that briefly, I'd appreciate it.
For sure. Christian, you want to touch on that from the Treasury standpoint?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the timeline obviously is December 31st of this year, but the mayor's asked,
right.
what is the timeline? Because this is not an investment, obviously, that you can make forever to receive the benefit. But from the technical standpoint, after December 31st, what are the benefits that investors do have?
Sure. So if someone invests by 12/31 of this year, and they hold on to their investment for 5 years, they automatically, the deferred amount of their current year, of their 2019 capital gain, let's say it was $100. So you invest $100 before December 31st. 5 years from now, if you're still holding on to your investment, your $100 that you owe in the future is reduced to $90.
Right.
And if you continue to hold on to that investment for 7 years from this year, your $90 is further reduced to only $85. And on December 31st of the year 2026, for your 2026 tax return, you're going to include the $85 as income instead of $100 today, but you have the benefit of investing the money before paying tax.
Right.
The other real benefit that I think is exciting to a lot of investors is if, say you invest on December 30th this year, if you hold on to your investment for 10 years, so till 2029, December 30th of 2029, any time between that date and the end of 2047, you can sell that investment and there'll be no capital gains taxation whatsoever. It's just gone.
Yep.
I don't think that was the actual question. The question was, what is the period of time into which we can make investments in the Qualified Opportunity Fund dynamic? And that is until your tax return you file in 2027 in respect of any capital gains you earn up through 2026.
Right. You heard that, Christian?
And then, if you invested in that last year, you get no deferral of tax because the deferral ends 5-7 years fine, but the deferral ends currently. It might be extended in 2026.
Right.
No matter how. But you'll get that tax-free upside all the way through your disposition in 2026.
That's correct.
Right. That's right.
Correct.
So it's a bit of a red herring to be worried about investing this year because the real power of this program is your tax-free upside.
That's right. Does everybody understand that?
Or the reduction.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Gary.
Microphone.
I just wanted to emphasize one other key point going back to Allison's comment about impact, measuring the impact.
So LED partnered with several other state economic development agencies to submit comments as the rules were being drafted in a number of rounds of rules to urge our federal government leaders to include some sort of impact reporting. And the point being there is if you're measuring the impact of the program, then that will help justify an extension of the program beyond December 2026. But it also will ensure that the investments are actually making a difference in the way that it was intended when that was amended into the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So that's very important for economic developers, is that we're measuring the impact. And so, yeah, that's correct. There's a bill currently, I guess, to ensure that we measure that impact.
It is, but also locally.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I want to express this because there are local leaders and localities, from developers to cities to economic development corporations, that are doing their own measurement inside of opportunity zones, inside of their own city. Nothing precludes you from doing that. Right now, the federal government is not doing that, but don't wait on the federal government, is my encouragement to you, because you will know locally before the federal government knows anyway. Now, the bill is coming. I don't know how that's going to, pan out. I'm not voting on that, obviously, because I'm with you all, right? But you can do that locally. I know somebody here at the university, right? Mr. Steven is working on that now. So, and that's very encouraging, by the way.
State level through the portal that we've designed. We
Good.
hope to track those projects,
Good.
and that's one way that we'll be tracking the progress of those.
Good.
So we have another group coming in. The community stakeholders. I will invite some of you, I don't know if we have enough chairs for everybody, but to stay with us. You can observe from the back, but we have community leaders, fund managers, nonprofits, pastor groups coming in to have this same conversation from a community perspective. So with that, I'm going to ask us to wrap up.
Yes.
And move to the next one.
Well, thank you. Let's do it. Awesome. Thank you, Krishna. We have a few, we're going to have another meeting probably about, I think at 11.
I'm in town. I just drove in, but I told them I only had till 11:30 and they hadn't even started, so I'm gonna be cooking up.
Okay, I will first apologize for those of you who got detoured, but glad you got a full tour of the entire student union. Up, down, and around. It's beautiful, Dr. Salva. I'm Monique Boulay with the Acadiana Planning Commission. I'm the CEO, and today we welcome some very special guests. I'm going to start by thanking Dr. Savoy for hosting us. The facilities are perfect, big and all around perfect. And then I want to also thank Mayor Robideau for having us here in Lafayette and allowing this conversation to go on. Then I'm going to next turn to the White House. Thank them for engaging in this conversation and for coming here and to listening to us and wanting to help support our initiatives and understand our challenges. And so that's what we're here today for. We have Scott Turner with the White House Opportunity Revitalization Council. We have the Department of Commerce here. We have the Delta Regional Authority, and we have HUD. And we have the IRS on the phone.
We refer to them as Treasury.
Right, Treasury.
Treasury, are you here?
At an arm's length, no. They are the heartbeat of this entire capital gains tax incentive, and so we are very glad to have them on the phone, hoping to learn as much as we can from them. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Robideau and let him say a few words.
Well, thanks. I'm just going to give everybody a quick welcome. We had a group in earlier this morning of a lot of elected officials, and I was talking to Scott earlier. And those are the guys that think they know everything. And then this group is the heartbeat of the community, which is really, I know, what the panel is looking forward to, because the opportunity zone, as you'll hear from Scott and others, in its simplest form, is how do we revitalize the areas that are in most need of revitalization. That was, I think, the mission of the zone, and Lafayette is just thrilled that we were one of the communities, Acadiana, selected for the White House to come on their listening tour and include to hear from us about why we think it's important. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Savoy to welcome you to the tour of the student union.
I wanted to show you where the library was because you never did remember when you were a student here.
It's not in this building. Okay. Proof.
There you go.
Can I move my seat here? I don't want to get the
No. Well, I just want to echo what the Mayor President said and welcome you all here. The university and South Louisiana Community College take very seriously our responsibilities to help with economic development. We train the future workforce, and so we want to make sure that they have a place to be employed and a community to support and a place to grow their family. So welcome to everyone. Back to you.
Sure. So with that, I'm excited to have Scott Turner here. He is dynamic. He's passionate. People think I'm passionate, but just a little bit compared to him. He brings the message of opportunity zones and the real potential of it alive. It's something that will take us 6 months. He can do here in 5 minutes with you guys. He has that much passion about this and the potential of it, the real intention of the program. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to him and give it to him.
Thank you, Ms. Monique and Mr. President and Mayor and all of you. So happy to be here. Some of the best food in America is here. I had chicken and sausage gumbo last night at Blue Dog.
Yeah.
At Blue Dog. And then we went to Dan's the other night. Don's. So I am full, so thank you. And y'all remember the name Brian Mitchell? Everybody remember that name?
Yeah.
I took a picture with him yesterday. Well, I took a picture with his picture at UL. And I met the head coach. And so this has been a tremendous trip. And we've had great convenings, if you will, thus far in Opelousas and also this morning in Lafayette. What I want to do is kind of give you a 30,000-foot overview of opportunity zones, but also, more importantly, give you the spirit of the law and the spirit of this council of which I've been named the steward of. 14 weeks ago, the president appointed me to be the executive director of this council. But I like to say I'm the shepherd or the steward of this because this is a very delicate initiative that we've taken, one that has the opportunity to revolutionize our country. And I'm particularly excited for this particular convening because in the executive order, it says to bring together faith leaders, education leaders, community leaders, investors, business owners, elected officials, to come about and to convene and to ideate with one another about opportunity zones. And if you look around this room, and I really wish more people could see this, because this is what it's about. People from all backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, people from different skill sets, from different parts of this state, different bits, some not even from this state, but now in this state, meeting together. Why is that important? Because the spirit of this legislation says, what can we do with those or for those in America who are not experiencing the same prosperity that our country is experiencing? What about those citizens that live inside of distressed, low-income, underserved communities? What can be done to lift them up in America today? That was the question that was asked. And so when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act legislation passed, here comes this tool, opportunity zones, 35 million people live inside of these communities that we call opportunity zones. High poverty, high crime, low lack of quality education, lack of quality housing stock. The amount of individuals that are adults that actually graduated from high school is very, very low. The life expectancy inside of opportunity zones is 3 years shorter than the life expectancy of our nation. So opportunity zones, some of you may have come from opportunity zones, what we call opportunity zones today, or have family members that grew up in such communities. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, not a government program for underserved people. This is a mission that has been set forth for the citizens of America. This is an initiative that the spirit behind this is that it has a long-lasting sustainability, generational impact, if you will. That's why we're here. The law created a capital gains incentive. So if people realize a capital gains, they sell an asset, they sell a business, they sell a stock, and now they have profit, they have capital gains. Well, the government requires you to pay tax on those capital gains. Well, this is an opportunity. If you can give it to the government and send it to the Treasury in Washington, which all of us abiding citizens pay taxes, or you can take those capital gains and invest them inside of the qualified opportunity fund, inside of an opportunity zone, in a community that has not seen investment, and do good, and yes, still at the same time receive a return on investment and a deferment of taxes. That's the incentive. Doesn't just require private money. There's also public investment with the White House Council. 17 agencies total with resources to partner with private money inside of opportunity zones to bring about revitalization. What does revitalize mean? Revitalize means to imbue with new life. It means to re-energize. It means to reinvigorate. The communities that we speak of need to be re-energized. They need to be I need to be re-energized. How about you? And so when you look at these communities, that is the goal, is to bring new life, not just for now, but for long-term sustainability. And it takes public and it takes private partnership, all of us working together to bring about this revitalization, real transformation, not just temporary change, but real transformation. That's the spirit of it. That's the goal of it. That's the mission. Poverty doesn't have a color. Poverty is not just urban. It's suburban, it's rural, and it's tribal. Poverty is interwoven throughout our country from corner to corner, from top to bottom. We have seen it. This is our 25th city in 14 weeks. But you know what? Revitalization doesn't have a color either. Revitalization is for all of people of America. Revitalization starts right here in the heart. That's why we're all here today. Are we in agreement? That's why I'm here. That's why I left Dallas, Texas, and everything I was doing, private business, NFL, all that left. Why? Because of the purpose of this mission. So somebody yesterday said, hey, thank you for taking time to come. And of course I said, you're welcome. But the next thing I said is, I'm supposed to be here. I'm here on purpose. So I want you to know that from the outset, this is where we want to be. That's the spirit of the law. That's the spirit of this council, is to bring about true transformation and long-term sustainability. Why community leaders? Why private business leaders? Why faith leaders? Why are you here to convene? Because you have the heartbeat, literally, of the community. All of us at the same table at one time to talk about the community, talk about the pain, talk about the complications, but also talk about the potential and the promise. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. And so having said that, and I'm going to be done, I have a team that's here amongst you and with me. And so I want them to say just a few brief words, and then we'll get started with our conversation. Is that all right? Is everybody clear on the mission and the spirit behind this and what we're doing and why you're such a vital part of this conversation and of the success of this initiative? Everybody with that? Okay. Dr. Fleming, please. Please say just a couple words for everybody.
My name is John Fleming. I'm a doctor by training, but I'm in a totally different role. And some of you, if the name sounds familiar to you, it's because I served as your congressman for 8 years from the 4th District, which did fall into Acadiana, including Evangeline Parish. I now serve as head of the Economic Development Administration under President Trump. And I've been convening with the Revitalization Council here for the last several weeks, and we're continuing to work together. So why is EDA involved in this space? EDA was set up in 1965 with the goal, with the mission, if you will, to revitalize communities that are blighted, that are underserved economically. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? That's exactly what opportunity zones are for. So we view this as a new tool in our toolbox to revitalize communities that have been blighted and ignored, perhaps depopulated and defunded over the decades. And we've seen a lot of them. How do we work? Uniquely among the federal government, we work from the bottom up. We have 6 regions, and we have EDRs, economic development representatives, for all 391 economic development districts throughout America. We have Jason. Where's Jason? You're over there. You moved. He is our economic development representative for Louisiana. And then right in front of him, the handsome gentleman with his hand up, is George from Austin. You are in the Austin region and served out of the Austin Regional Office. We work with good folks like Monique, who heads APC. So it's all boots on the ground. We're all working together. We have people who know you, who are in the community all across America. And so when you apply for grants, which are usually infrastructure-based, to stimulate and, if you will, catalyze private investment across America. And how are we doing at that? We actually study this. We look at the metrics. And for every federal taxpayer dollar that we invest into these blighted communities, difficult communities, we get $15 of private capital investment. That's a huge leverage. And that doesn't count the matching that comes from the community itself. And so the important thing to understand about that is you have skin in the game. You have commitment in making this successful. We had a question in the prior panel, well, how do we know this is sustainable? Well, you know, because the risk is not the risk from the federal government, at least not for the most part. For the most part, it is private capital risk. It's investors, it's people in your community who invest their money. And I've learned over the years that wealthy people are smart people, and they're not fools with their money. They invest it into things they know will return that investment. So if you are able to attract it through these incentives and many others that we'll talk about today, it is very much sustainable. So anyway, what we do is we take applications and we provide grants that will support these private capital investments. We also have an integrator role. That role is to be sure that your application gets to the right place. It may actually belong with HUD or USDA, so we make sure it gets to the right place. We coordinate, and also we have something called CEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And so among our 391 EDDs, there's a strategy there, and we're updating those to include opportunity zones. So that's important, because if you fail to plan, the old saying says, you plan to fail. And we do not want this to fail. And Congress is watching this very carefully. And it's my belief, having served in Congress, that this program will be extended and strengthened over time if it's successful. If, on the other hand, we goof up and we fail, then they will end it very quickly. So anyway, I'll turn it back over to Scott, but we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. Chris.
My name is Chris Caldwell. I'm the chairman of the Delta Regional Authority. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Monique, and your team for putting everything together. Just real short, for those who aren't familiar with the Delta Regional Authority, a federal agency that is charged with investing in public infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, workforce development, economic development across 8 states, 252 counties. The vast majority of Acadiana here is in APC, and as well as the state of Louisiana. Like Scott said, as a member of the White House Council, basically every program we have, we've come in and streamlined or put a caveat, a point system, a bonus for a project application within an opportunity zone, which yesterday just announced we granted $119,000 to APC here to build out a prospectus for all of Acadiana for your OZs. So really happy to get here. I'm going to be quiet so we can get to the conversation and hear from y'all.
Hey, thank you, Chris. Ty.
I'm Ty Petty with HUD. I'm the lucky panelist here because I got to do a bunch of the advanced planning meetings for this. This is my second trip to Lafayette, so I'm very lucky to be here again. HUD's main role in all this is to, with Secretary Carson being chairman of the Opportunity Council, is to be a facilitator amongst all the different moving pieces. Much of our portfolio and our customers are located in opportunity zones, and so we have the relationships in the community and on the ground, and so we want to help bring all that together with our federal agency partners and with members of the council and bringing everyone together for meetings like this and the work that comes after. And so y'all have a great community. You have a very strong advocate for your community in Giselle Menard. She's part of the reason we're here today because she reached out to me and connected me with APC, and we were able to help make this meeting happen with her strong advocacy for your community, and it just is emblematic of the spirit of this community. And so thank you all again for having us.
Thank you, Ty. Okay, is it okay if we open it up now? You're good. We'll open up for questions and discussion, if that's okay with you all. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner.
Yes, sir.
I've got a cold, y'all. I don't know if you want me using this. I was going to sit there. No. I'm like, y'all. No, oh, jeez. I'm good. All right. So 2 questions. First is the 2026 deadline. We're running up against the maximization of that 7-year benefit. So essentially, we have 4 months left, really, to get that 7-year benefit. Do you see any way of getting that 2026 to like 2027 and give us a little bit more time, 1? And 2, what do you think are best practices? We're very fortunate to have a company we've invested in called Neuro Rescue with us today. They moved from Columbus, Ohio, here to Lafayette, Louisiana, specifically because of the Opportunity Zone. And we want to know what your ideas are in investing in, a best practice in a qualified, business in an opportunity zone. Because we've seen how real estate really is kind of coming together nicely, but that business side would be really good. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, and I hope you feel better. You don't sound like that. So the deadline extension, I can't promise you that, to be honest. And do we have Treasury on the phone? Nope, he's not going. Well, he was there, but anyway, that has come up in a lot of the places that we have been. As you know, the comment period is closed for Treasury, and they are looking at all the comments that they received. And that is one that has been submitted. That's one that has been offered up. But at this point, I don't see that happening. And so I hate to give people false hope. Right now, that's the deadline that we're working with, and those are the parameters that we're working with. If anything changes through Congress or through Treasury, obviously you'll know. But right now, the deadline is, December 31st. And so to your second question, and congratulations on bringing the new company from Ohio to here. And I think that is a case of best practice. And it's one that I would like to talk about. And so if you could explain that to us so we all would know, that would be great. About how you brought the company here from Ohio to Lafayette.
Poor Cian, he works at a healthcare company, but he can't get over his cold. So David Calicut, I serve as president of Lafayette General Health, and if you know about Lafayette General Health, we're a 7-hospital system, the largest private employer, sort of west of the Atchafalaya Basin to the Texas border, serve as a level 2 trauma center. Our main campus is located in the oil center, which is an opportunity zone, but many of our other campuses that we have throughout the system in the hospitals that we own or we are partnered with are also located in opportunity zones. And so we view this as an important tool for our system to grow and develop the services that we have the opportunity to provide to the community. We're a not-for-profit system. We serve rural communities. We serve, sort of the inner city communities. We serve suburban, smaller cities, and then we also have the former LSU hospital, which is more has a public approach. And so our employees, I appreciated your opening, Scott, because, I lead 4,600 employees that approach every day with purpose, and that they know they do worthwhile work, and they know that they're making a difference in their community. And so we're using this as a tool to go along with our innovation fund, where we are funding the new development of new technologies, consumer-based technologies for the delivery of healthcare. And we're also using it in conjunction with a real estate fund that we've developed through our foundation. Through our work with innovation, through Cian's work with a number of innovation groups, we had the opportunity to become familiar with NeuroRescue. And through those conversations, the opportunity, we're going to say opportunity a lot today, but the opportunity to have them here, where we have one of the best ambulance providers, Acadian Ambulance, in our community. We also have Schumacher in our community, which is a large provider of emergency medicine and hospital-based medicine, and LHC Group. The ability for us to develop new medical products and approaches is just tremendous here in Lafayette. And so the OZ is going to be important for us. On my desk right now are the final documents for the creation of our up to $50 million fund that we'll be putting together as a system. And so we're excited, certainly, that I have background music to my speech. But we're excited that they chose to come here and to be a part of this community. So with that, Cian, do you want, maybe we can turn it over to Brittany?
Sure. You guys want to talk a little bit about company?
Good afternoon, Mr. Turner. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Robert Marr. I'm the president and co-founder of NeuroRescue. I'm joined today by our director of sales and co-founder, Brittany Soder. So upon admittance to Accelerate South here in Lafayette, Louisiana in the fall of 2018, we earned the investment of local entities such as Acadian Companies and Lafayette General Hospital. We're newly located and headquartered in the Oil Center here in Lafayette, and I'm very proud to tell you that we're currently building out a medical device that will help save lives post-cardiac arrest and additional use indications. And we're building our product right here in the Lafayette area, in Grand Coteau in specific, at Noble Plastics. And we couldn't be more proud of this community and how they've treated us as a company and individuals.
Wow, that's spectacular. And I say that because of the tool of opportunity zones and the ability to create a qualified opportunity fund. This is a case of best practice of utilizing that to bring a company from another state, or just a company in general, obviously, to this state with a device that could affect the community and beyond. So that's economic development and it's community development. That is a tremendous example of what we have been saying. Have y'all heard about this company? Did everybody heard about it? Okay. Well. So I didn't know about it. And so, that is very encouraging. To your question about other cases of best practice, I met with one hospital leader in St. Louis, and they have property inside of an opportunity zone. Their hospital is not actually in an opportunity zone, but they're thinking about building an additional facility in an opportunity zone that could also be a distribution center. It could house some employees inside the hospital, but also be a distribution center for some of the supporting businesses that are either coming to the region or businesses that they already work with. That's one example that I have heard from a healthcare. In Canton, Ohio, the Altman healthcare system is inside of an opportunity zone. And have y'all heard of Canton, Ohio, right? The Hall of Fame. We were just there, which is in the opportunity zone. Well, Altman is trying to build an ecosystem and to benefit the neighborhood, the houses, and the community around their hospital. So they have mentoring programs. They have community development foundation that they're working with inside of the community, and the people in the community are partnering with the hospital. Some work there, some don't, to bring about revitalization in that region. And so those are the two best examples that I've heard thus far in our tour. Does that make sense? Of what hospitals or healthcare systems are doing, either building new facilities, expanding new facilities, distribution centers, and community engagement inside of opportunity zone. Does that help you? Good. Yes, sir. Bishop.
Thanks, Chad. Did you want to?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay.
I'm here to listen to you.
Yes. Thank you so much for convening us. And my name is Bishop Carlos Harvin. I pastor New Beginnings Christian Church on the north side of Lafayette. I also belong to the Senior Pastoral Alliance. It's a group of about 25 pastors. That's a miracle.
Yeah. I'm tracking.
God is working. We've been together for about 3 years, and we have a vision to do economic development outside the four walls of our houses of faith, different denominations, but we're coming together on behalf of our community. As you do the tour, we wanted to know, and you mentioned best practices for faith leaders, faith communities that are interested in community and economic development. Are you noticing some promising practices, best practices that other regions are successful as faith leaders, that we could see some of those models, how they could work here in the Lafayette area?
And thank you, Bishop. And that is a great question, and I'm encouraged by your willingness to be involved. We have convened faith leaders in Chicago, at the White House, and in other areas of the country thus far, to talk about how and what faith leaders, pastors, because, you know, there's a lot of business people inside of our houses of faith, you know. And so we have been convening together to see how the churches or the pastors can get involved as it pertains to opportunities. Now, it doesn't preclude you as a private citizen to start an opportunity fund. Nothing precludes you from doing that. Obviously, the church obviously will not create an opportunity fund, but as a private citizen, you can do that. We've also had pastors that have community development corporations, CDCs. And so we're now exploring how CDCs can be involved inside of opportunity zones. And we've been working with HUD and other agencies to see it. So that information is to come. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a different type of involvement, as you know, being from the faith community. But right now, the biggest impact that I've seen from faith leaders is the people inside of your congregation to educate the message of opportunity zones, to educate the spirit behind the revitalization that could take place. And any information you need, we will provide. We will do our best to come to you, to send to you, because education is the biggest part to get the community engaged inside of opportunity zones. And then from the business standpoint, that's what we're exploring now. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Yes, sir. And we can connect offline too. We can talk further. Oh, you know what? Okay.
Thank you. I got a quick answer and a question. Just in response to your, and I don't mean to step on your parade.
No, please do.
So a good example, we're doing a project in Baton Rouge where we have a community church that's invested alongside us. They have a foundation that's associated with their church. Yeah. And so what our intention was, we had it's a group of where everybody's putting real dollars into the project. And for us as developers, and I think this goes for pretty much any developer in the room, we always welcome the ability to work alongside the community. And so the idea there is if there are real dollars in there, that you are invested in making sure that's successful. And then when those dollars come back in, those dollars get redeployed back into the community. And so the way that builds is that if those dollars keep getting recirculated around and continuing to build around the project that you're doing, then it helps to lift that project up and make it a better project for everybody. And so I think that once everybody gets out of the mindset of there being any kind of walls between faith-based groups and developers, and this idea that I think once those dialogues start to happen, you'll see that there's a lot more opportunity there than maybe seems evident. And the other thing is that I think a lot of developers are able to educate and give incentives, because what we want as developers is we want the small developer to come next to us and to do 2 houses or to do 1 house or to renovate their own houses so that everything builds up together. And so what you find is those catalyst projects, when you engage with a group that's already in the community, becomes a much more explosive kind of catalyst than just one-off project that slowly develops. You see something happen in a 5-year period where you might see it happen in a 20-year period. So that's kind of one example where it's and I'm happy to share it with you. It's an electric depot we're doing, and we're going to continue to do projects. We've already started the spinoff projects from there. You know, a 5-apartment complex, a old hotel is getting renovated into multifamily for elderly, you know, people. So there's a lot of things that can happen from there. Baton Rouge, and it's an opportunity zone, but this is about Lafayette. So apologize. So the question that I have is based on we focus a lot of our energy in multifamily. So my question is for HUD. Is there any kind of I don't know, incentive's not the right word. Is there any kind of expediting for like a 221D for a project that's in an opportunity zone, or is there an opportunity to provide something like that that would incentivize multifamily development with, you know, HUD dollars, which, you know, still everything at risk, same kind of process. But I know, like, for instance, for low-income housing tax credits, those projects go to the top of the pile for HUD. Is there an opportunity there to put in the middle, I guess, you know, above a normal project, but below a LIHTC project if it's in an opportunity zone?
Sure, and we can talk more offline about specifics. And I confess I'm not a multifamily guy, but kind of just at a high level, what the council has directed agencies to do is find those efficiencies and find places where we can facilitate opportunity zones. And for example, like what we do at HUD is for any grant or application, we attach preference points. Specifically for multifamily, where we're seeing a lot of action too, is we've created fee breaks and interest breaks incentives on FHA loans. And so that's a big piece for HUD, is we can save investors and developers thousands of dollars in those fees and points on those interests. As to the specific program you asked for, the 221D4, I'd have to talk to someone in multifamily about that, but I'm happy to get with you offline. But just kind of as a general high level across federal agencies and at HUD is we're looking at how can we attach, you know, preference points. For example, at HUD, we attach, I believe it's 3 bonus points to choice neighborhood grants that are located in opportunity zones. And for those of you that are familiar with choice neighborhood, that's I call it the Powerball of HUD grants, because that's a huge investment in a singular neighborhood in a community. And so to get 3 additional points to your application, sometimes those applications come down to just fractions of points that, you know, get those awards into specific neighborhoods. So to have that kind of advantage just in that application, and like I said, we do that across all of our competitive grant programs. And I know other agencies are doing that and looking at their programs as well as to how they can do that. But I'm happy to work with you to get more specifics on the 221D4.
Well, and thank you. That's terrific to know. And it was your opening comments that made me think about that question, because, you know, if it ties into, you know, grant programs or, you know, those kind of things, that's really helpful.
And we'll have an answer for you by the end of the meeting, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
And thank you all for having us today. And my name is John Ford. I'm a developer in North Lafayette since it's Track 11. We have developed some senior housing in North Lafayette through tax credits. We have currently set up a qualified opportunity fund to continue to spread our platform throughout this underserved community where we are situated. Some of the concerns that I have is the qualified investor. The level of income that investor has to have and its net worth is problematic in my community. So it's very hard for me to attract a qualified investor in a underserved area like I serve. So I would like you to speak to how we might be able to partner with other funds that could either invest in our particular fund or partner in any type of way.
Okay, good. So obviously there's no minimum investment and there's no maximum investment inside of a qualified opportunity fund. And so, and we were talking with Ms. this morning, right, just a while about the minimum and the maximum. And so you don't have to have a certain amount of net worth, you know, to invest. You just have to have a capital gains, you know, and so whatever your capital gains is, you know, you can take that and invest inside of a qualified opportunity fund. And so I don't want you to think that you have to be worth a certain amount of money to get involved in it. That's the beauty of this program. There's no minimum and there's no maximum. Everybody see that. You don't have to have so much money in order to do this. As far as matchmaking, and Monique and Acadiana and the city and the state, they can do a good job of matchmaking. We, particularly from the council, don't do matchmaking because we have to be careful, obviously, of picking winners and losers, say, hey, you need to work with them. That's not really our assignment, but there are ways for the local economic development, the portal that's going up, to do matchmaking. But your responsibility is to say, my project is attractive because of this. Make your project attractive and noticeable to attract investment, either be from local or outside of Lafayette.
One attempting to do that, when we look at our performance that we're running, the profit margin on the backside, 8%, we may be able to get up to 10%. So when I speak to an investor, that profit margin on the backside is so low, it kind of shuns them away from wanting to move forward. And that has been a problem as far as our particular fund and attracting investors. But one of the other situations that we're actually looking at that could possibly help that particular community is the new cash crop of hemp being able to be grown in the state of Louisiana. We're looking at the old Walmart building in North Lafayette to do an in-house grow that might be able to help us to garner the type of investment that we might need into that particular venture. Then we might be able to spin off into creating enough cash flow and opportunities to continue to invest in that district.
Yeah, the deals have to pencil out. Number one. I mean, it's a capital risk, so they have to pencil out. We all know that, and we want them to pencil out, obviously. And as the most attractive you can make your product, your project with the senior housing, the better. But the deals do have to pencil out, and that's the reality, But there are social impact investors that are out there.
And Rob, before you start, John, Mandy Mitchell was here earlier, and was
Yeah,
Mandy
she's
still here? Okay, and
Yes, she
Scott
is.
had, is it August the 12th, Mandy?
Yes, on August the 12th, Mandy Mitchell, Louisiana Economic Development. On August the 12th, LED is launching what's called the Opportunity Exchange. It is an online portal where we will work with regional economic developers to identify projects in their areas that are seeking investment, and we will invite investors, institutional investors, individual investors from in-state, out-of-state, to take a look at this portal to see what projects are available for investment. So that's one way that state Louisiana Economic Development is assisting with facilitating connections for projects that are seeking those investment dollars in opportunity zones.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you. I'll stand up so you can see me.
I got this on his house.
Mr. Turner, thank you and your team for being here. My name is Rob Eddy, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Community Foundation of Acadiana, which is based here in Lafayette but has a presence in 8 parishes across Acadiana. The staff and the board is working very deliberately to try to learn more about opportunity zones and what the role for the foundation is to make a positive impact. So it'd be interesting if you could share any success stories or best practices where community foundations or philanthropy or both have partnered with other funds to make an opportunity zone initiative come to fruition.
Yes, sir. And so I have heard of different philanthropies and different foundations partnering with funds to do opportunity zone projects. Quite frankly, foundations and the philanthropic community, they were a little bit more reserved in the beginning, rightfully so, really until the second round of rules came out and they wanted to see how it was going to, play out. But I have seen foundations now get more involved. One particular foundation has a process where they are naming zone captains, if you will, inside of cities. And they have created a fund to finance these zone captains inside of these cities as community leaders. And that's one example I've seen so far. And if you go on and you read about the Kresge Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation, they have great summaries, and insight about what they may be involved with. from a foundation standpoint. But foundations are very, very important, as we heard Dyke say, partner with foundations to do development inside of opportunity zones. And so your role is critical. And have you talked to Monique already? Okay, good. All right, to see how you can get involved just from a local standpoint. And, really honestly, those stories are coming out. Those cases of best practices from foundations are coming out at this point. Before, as I said, there was some hesitation. But I'm starting to hear more and more. And hopefully I can have more stories for you later. But at this point, that's what I have. Is that okay? Yes, sir. Okay.
Good afternoon. Stephen Ortego. I'm an architect and developer here in Lafayette. Welcome.
Yes, sir.
I guess my question is a follow-up to Mr. Ford's question. When a project might not pencil out or be attractive to investors, especially because of these neighborhoods, you might not be able to get as much of a rent. Talking about multifamily or mixed use. But I guess the question is, whenever you do a pro forma, there's no way to really account for the tax side of it. So have y'all found a way of being able to show investors that you add this much percent to your internal rate of return? Is it 2%, 3%? What's sort of the average that you can then pitch that to an investor? Because there's no way to show it to them in the numbers because it's about their taxes and that,
Right.
If that makes
so,
sense.
From our standpoint, from the council, that's not what we get involved in as far as showing investors, hey, this is the rate of return you can get. That's not our assignment. There are experts out here who do get involved in that aspect of it, but from the council, we have to be very careful when it comes to getting involved from an investment standpoint or a pro forma standpoint, and you may be able to get this percentage return. That's not really what we do. Our job is to convene. Our job is to bring public investment, to partner with private investment. But the beauty of this tool is that it's a local and a privately led initiative. Anytime that the government gets involved in that type of aspect, that's not a winning solution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess the question is more, if it doesn't change a pro forma, because it can't, how do you get an investor excited about it, about a project, when you can't change the pro forma? It's not affecting an appraisal. It's not affecting a cost. It's not affecting a revenue. It's affecting the backside, which is not in the pro forma. So what have you seen in other communities that developers are doing to get people excited about investing, even if they might be making 2 or 3% less than in a different zone?
Right. Well, I mean, every project is different. In Birmingham, Alabama, the American Life building, it's been a fixture in Birmingham for years, but it sat vacant for 36 years. People drove by that building, walked by that building forever. Anybody from Birmingham know what I'm talking about? From Alabama? And so Birmingham, Alabama came together and they created a community board, right? Made up of 11 members. And they said, okay, what can we do for Birmingham? Because we have blighted properties, we have vacant properties, we have poverty, in and throughout Alabama, in and throughout Birmingham. And so they created this community investment board. And they got people like yourselves together with investors and community and faith and education. They all see the same building, right? And it may not look like it penciled out, but they looked at that as an opportunity, okay? But what they did is they spent a lot of time to make that investment, to make that project attractive. Like, okay, this is what it is, but these are the resources we have. This is why this it may not bring, the return on investment that you naturally or normally get, but this is what it can do for long-term sustainability. Now it's 140 units of workforce housing, and they're building an ecosystem out around that. So what I'm saying is you have to look at what you have, okay? We can't tell you how to make it attractive because you know best from the community standpoint, from the investment standpoint. The affordable housing that I told you about on the west side of Atlanta, I told you that in the beginning. Was that the other group?
That was the other group.
Okay, so on the west side of Atlanta, which is it's a tough part of town. Developers came in and they purchased a housing project, a few of them, to turn them into market rate affordable market rate housing, multifamily housing. And they saw that there was open land, grass. They turned it into a farm, a 1 acre farm, to produce vegetables and fruit that the residents would come in and nurture and farm and then receive that produce as part of community development. You understand what I'm saying? The return on investment, it may not be exactly what they want, or it may not be as high, but the community impact, the social impact was there. The long-term sustainability is there.
Your pro forma is your pro forma, right? It pencils out.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't.
Right.
Okay? But when you go to those individual investors, what you're doing is you're talking to them about their individual capital gains and specifically what they're going to benefit. Are they getting in before the end of this year? Then they're going to get a 7-year benefit minimum. Yeah. This is why I asked the 2026 open in 2027.
Right.
Right.
Still working.
Yeah.
Have to deal with it. Right? Okay. And so what is that going to look like for them? And then are they going to stay in for 10 years? Because if they stay in for 10 years, then that's the magic happens.
Yeah,
Because
that's the pitch. I mean, like I said, it's got a pencil. We say that. I mean, it's got a pencil first off. This has got a pencil. So the problem we're talking about back here. But the enticement of this, it is that 10 years or that 7. And, hey, Jensen, Wade, there you go. Go talk to that guy about moving the deadline. It's Congressman Abraham's guy. So, we need Congress. So, sorry to throw you under the bus, but I'm an old congressional staffer. So, but the point is that, that is the draw. Look, the president and Congress, they've laid this here, right? I mean, they've brought this, this land here. Now, what y'all go and do with it is up to you. I mean, because what I've been so encouraged about, what I was going to say earlier, this ties right back into, is that, we're here at the university, and we've got the CEO of the hospital system, probably combined the 2 biggest employers in the region, the 2 most, and probably per employee per capita, higher than average wage than the average for the whole 8 parish area. Okay, by default or by all of that investment, the community leaders right here are taking all the charge. Right, what you guys have done. So when you were talking about best practice, I was like, yeah, it's right there. Right, I mean, because it's community led.
That's right.
What we can do as a council is 132 and growing federal regulations across our respective agencies and programs to cut red tape and streamline it. But the project has to come up out of you guys and the community leaders, to which I would say you're doing a pretty good job of right here. And on top of that, my old boss used to always say is you cannot legislate risk out of capitalism. That is what separates us as a nation. So there's going to be risk, but the benefit is this deal in the gains. I mean, that's the pitch.
I agree with you 100%, and I am very pleased with what Lafayette General has done, what EDA is doing downtown, and I'm going to make a plea to them to look at social impact in your investment portfolio, because your employees are coming back to a community that is broken, that needs diehard help, and the revenue streams that you're going to continue to make over the years with your investments. I would like you all to consider reinvesting back into those totally underserved communities.
Mr. Ford, our mission is to restore, maintain, and improve health, and that's for all Acadians. And so by able to be putting this fund together and invest in what we're doing in healthcare, we're investing in all of the health of all the people of Acadia. And so that's why we view this as such an important part of our mission.
And I agree with you 100%. You're actually doing that, but what I'm saying is when they come back into the community from your employment, university employment, they still are coming into an environment that is socially different and broken from the rest of this community. And I applaud what you all are doing, and I want to support that, but I'm just pleading to every investor in this room to look at, in this community, to look at the social aids of this community. Other than our healthcare issues. We have some very serious issues outside of healthcare.
And Stephen, to your point, if you think one building in Birmingham can make a difference, I'd like to talk to you about a hotel at Four Corners and the Gateway Corridor, the University Corridor, and the opportunity, again to use that word, that we have that goes basically right by Acadian Ambulance is in that opportunity zone, leads right to Lafayette General, leads right to the university, leads right to City Hall, leads right from I-10 all the way to I-49 and the brand new airport that we're going to have. So see me after the meeting. We have an opportunity.
And I know an investor that wants to do all that, but he's so daunted by the task ahead of going through all the red tape. The Schumacher Family Foundation, they want to pump so much money into that area. And they just need a vehicle to do it in collaboration with.
We'd like to be aboard.
Yeah, that's a great
We'd like to be a
example. Is like
Next, the university corridor, one of Acadiana's, y'all are investing in the community. We will want to invest in the community.
So prime example right here is we've talked about the council and Scott and them have led this charge, for all of us across the federal government, to come in and streamline and make it easier. Here's my challenge to you and to your local leaders: your zoning ordinances, your license, your fees. Look, your state, the state of Louisiana has gone along and has, matched some historic tax credits and to that time period. Other states have cut the state capital gains, to match. And I think that's all great, but at the local level, at your planning commission, at that, I mean, y'all are ones like, okay, so here's what the feds have done. Y'all come put in right here and make this path easier, make this daunting task of some maybe the local environmental ordinances and those things. Like, can we loosen that up in these areas?
We're going to come right back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Attorney, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. I mean, your passion is obviously there. I mean, I was expecting an altar call after your original
Wait a
presentation.
second, we're not done yet.
Yeah,
I still got to close.
I'm Troy Wayman with One Acadiana. We're a 9-parish regional economic development organization that serves all of Acadiana, and a lot of our leadership is in this room, in fact, and a lot of folks sit on our board and our executive committee and are our major investors in our organization. We work very closely with APC on a number of things, and most recently we've been working with them on the prospectus that you have in the packet here and putting that together. And by we, I mean Danielle on our team and Andre Bro and others in our marketing communications department. We have we recently put out another document as well called How We Compete, which it outlines various incentives, other incentives that are used, or other incentive programs like TIFs, economic development districts, help me out here, pilots, many other things. I see the two things as a combined document, because we initially did it for downtown Lafayette as part of an initiative because of what we saw in a recent trip that we did to Greenville, South Carolina, and what they've been able to accomplish there. But when we got it finished, I looked at it and I'm like, this is a very scalable document. It can be used in any community, anywhere across Acadiana. So how well can all of these things, can opportunity zones be utilized with these other types of incentives? Because you talk about the public dollars that can go into these projects with things like tax incremental financing and economic development districts and business interest districts and those types of things. How can those things work together?
Talking about like stack financing?
Right.
Very well. And nothing precludes you from doing such. And we've seen that throughout the country. I mean, most of the funds or most of the projects that are being funded have some sort of stacked financing, be it new markets, be it LIHTC, be it historic tax credits. And that's one of the beauties of this tool, and the flexibility of it is to allow you to do that. The opportunity fund obviously is for the capital gains benefit, for the tax deferment and what have you, but it's maybe just part of the finance that's used. In Cleveland, we were just there last week in Cleveland, and a project that's going on there is a new about a 2.3 acre site that has a new bakery going in, it has workforce housing going in. They use all equity from the bank, PNC Bank. They use qualified opportunity funds. They use tax credits. And so most of the projects that we have seen have been some sort of stacked financing. So it works very well together, to your point.
Well, I'll put a plug into, with that prospectus, we've developed a website called investkadiana.org, and we're going to be continuously improving that website, connecting it to a number of things. We worked with LCG because here in Lafayette because they wanted to do a prospectus specifically on Lafayette opportunity zones. We're working with some other parishes right now, so we're excited about where we are.
Great, thank you.
So, I'd like to follow up on that real quickly. Chase Terrebonne, I work for UBS, and I was a local developer in Louisiana as well as an attorney, and have a vast background in real estate. But I follow UBS's Opportunity Zone because we have a national impact on it, and we have OZFs that have become pretty sustainable. What I've noticed and what I've kind of structured through conversation with quite a few people in Lafayette is the best structure obviously is the stack financing. The major issue with stack financing becomes the time frame available to put it together, which my understanding is this panel's here to push through the red tape of that stack financing, hopefully to, you know, one up other projects because of the impact on the Opportunity Zone, but additionally the local community effects. And obviously some of these programs take years to manipulate through the red tape. Is there a specific panel that is fast tracking within each different organization, or say a group who is aware of the OZFs and the true opportunity that it brings, mainly in conjunction with business is the way I've seen it really progress quickly? Because if it's just a pure development, there's no business aspect. You run into the issue, which was just discussed, of the back end. The profit margin doesn't work. So our OZF, UBS, has a very complex module, which is financed through a bank. It's a strategic partnership. It's going to be refinanced in 2026 because the date is set. And then the end point is we have a buyer that we're going to finance the whole project too. Now this is a $400 million project. So the smaller projects, obviously the average investor is looking to make the best bang for the buck with the tax deferral, the incentive being the tax deferral, but they do want the back end investment to be worthwhile, and no one knows what the real estate market's going to do. So with that stack financing, which becomes imperative, is there a way, I guess, to navigate through the multiple departments? Obviously, there's quite a few different areas you can go to for the stack financing with an OZ project that is kind of led by somebody. Is there a quarterback? You know, or is it literally the developer's the quarterback and we're going to each individual, you know, HUD for the housing portion, and then, you know, the commercial business, and then the TIF financing? Is there someone who's kind of been appointed to that position to assist the walkthrough on an Opportunity Zone Fund project?
Not from the council. That's a privately led deal. That's a local deal, and as it should be, because our mission is, from the council standpoint, the agencies that we do have on the council, is to, which was said before, to streamline and take away some of the difficulty in accessing these competitive grants, which we are identifying. Now we've identified already 132, and you know, as time goes on, obviously we'll identify more. But as far as appointing someone to help or to assist in accessing local tax incentives or local financing, that's not what we're doing as a council. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had a liaison.
Well, yeah, we do. And you want to talk to that part?
Yeah, let me address that. Because I went over the entire 50 or so years of Economic Development Administration in about 60 seconds, so I apologize. That's where we can help you, because we have 391 economic development districts across the country. That's 90% of the country, and you have one right here. You also have someone who's on our payroll, as I mentioned, Jason, who represents Louisiana. We view everything from a local standpoint. We start at the beginning, a local community. So if you come to us with an interest in going forward with some investment, we put that together. We're tracking and collecting data across the country, which is going to be focused. The White House, I think, is developing a website. We're developing an interactive website. We'll probably end up merging our websites, but you'll be able to hover over a certain point on the map and see everything that's happening relative to opportunity zones. So we view that as part of our function at EDA, that if you have a specific area you want to invest in or you want to attract investors, we'll work with you. Of course, there are going to be plenty of consultants out there, and in fact, some of our grants are for what we call technical assistance, which is to hire such experts to do that.
Does that help you out? Yeah. Right here. You've been waiting for a long time.
I'm Giselle Menard. My day job is as a physical therapist, home health. I serve a lot of the areas that are in the opportunity zones in many parishes, and I've done so for about 13 years now. So I do, and I also live in one of the opportunity zones. My husband and I have made investments in other rental properties, also in the University Corridor Opportunity Zone area. So I think my whole life, I feel, is immersed in not just what I see as the needs from my perspective, but in being in the homes of people who also are the most in need. And I also represent a group called Town Folk, and we are the grassroots, boots on the ground neighborhood organization for Laplace, which is in kind of in the Four Corners corridor area. So I would just want to say to you, Mr. Zuslag, if there is a way that you guys need to get in touch with the heartbeat of the community as you look forward to getting the Schumacher Group involved, or anybody, I just pointed to you because you mentioned it, we would love to work with you. You know, we're not a group that has tons of money, but we've got tons of heart. And I'll borrow Chad's saying, we'll feed you like family if we can get some people around that want to show up like you all did today. I just want to thank you also from the bottom of my heart for being here. It just means so much to me that that Ty was able to assemble this group to really listen to us, because often people like us do feel overlooked because we don't represent anything but just, you know, normal people, and who don't often have a voice and a seat at the table. So thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I do want to say on Ty's behalf, he did give you credit for the team being here and bringing them to Lafayette at the first panel. So thank you for doing that. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Falgu. I represent an underserved community about 30 minutes south of here. And so one of the reasons why that community is underserved is because the wealth that built that community initially in that opportunity zone has since moved away because of the oil and gas downturn, because of relocating families, and a variety of other issues like deferred maintenance on infrastructure and companies moving out of our communities. So my question to you is, will there be a central repository where economic development professionals like me can locate these qualified funds in one place and help evaluate what kind of projects they're working on, what geographies they're working in, so that we can make those effective relationship building efforts?
So, that's a good question. Our council, we don't have a repository of investors. There are, and if anybody wants to speak to this, you can, if you've seen or heard of.
There's 4 or 5.
Right.
But we were looking for something like CDFI fund did with the CDEs for new
Right.
market tax credits or something
Right.
similar to that.
We don't currently have that. What we do have coming is opportunityzones.gov, which HUD is creating in partnership with the other agencies. We are hopeful that it will be launched, and I say hopeful, in the next few weeks, which will be a portal where you can see projects, you can see maps, you can see cases of best practices, you can have a fact tab where questions about opportunity zones will be answered. There's a field manual that we are creating right now that is coming out to be dispersed on the ground to our representatives on the ground to help and to educate people inside of the cities and the communities. Those things are coming. We have been working very hard on edits. It was getting ready to be launched a couple weeks ago, but I put the stop on it because I wanted it to be a little bit different and a little bit better. So that's my fault, but that's coming from our standpoint. And I'm hopeful that it'll be here in a few weeks. But as it is right now, we don't have a portal that said, hey, these are the investors that are out there that are looking, or these are the these are the funds, you know, that are available. Now, from the council standpoint, are you talking about private funds?
Qualified opportunity zone
Okay,
funds.
yeah. No, we don't have that.
So, but look,
I noticed.
so there are a lot of people, individuals and funds that are out there looking for deals. Okay, I mean, I have met with some from across. I mean, I was with a lawyer in Little Rock 2 days ago who is says weekly she's got a hedge fund or a PE looking at with her talking about OZs from across the country. The purpose of the grant that I announced yesterday to APC is for them to collect all this information, okay, that, you know, tell me the website name again.
So it's investigating and
they were ahead of the grant. I mean, look, they're ahead of the grant. But the reality is that there is the place, because these investors, they're out there looking for these deals. So your information that her team has compiled and has there's that one-stop shop that is your marketing tool to attract those investors. Okay, that is, and that literally came out of this council. Like this grant that DRA that we made came out of, you know, Secretary Carson asking me to be with this and sitting here working like, well, how can we do this? And we earmark that money. So that is your marketing tool to go out and attract investors. Is that what that? Yes.
So I need to share credit with Troy over there. So it's our website.
Okay.
They developed it, really. That was their partner. That was their piece in this. But it also, the grant and will help us develop the prospectus for you. And we are working. We had a big stakeholder meeting down in Abbeville 2 weeks ago. Awesome. And the state, and I don't know if Mandy wants to speak up again, I think it's going to step up, and we will get support from the state as far as the matchmaking goes. They are signing up in initiatives that cover all of us. In addition, Mandy, you mentioned earlier this morning about the state incentive that was put in the tax abatement. Yes. So for those local and community developers that are good with the restoration tax abatement program, thank you, Chad. What we did this past legislative session was we expanded that program to include opportunity zones. So the way the restoration tax abatement program works is for any individual or business that invests in blighted, dilapidated, abandoned structures that are located in historic districts, downtown development districts, or economic development districts, could receive up to a 10-year abatement on their investment in those structures. What we did this past session, we expanded that program to include structures located within opportunity zones, and that's every one of our 150 census tracts around the state that have been designated as opportunity zones. So that's one of the ways that the state is helping to expand the incentives that we talked about. Someone talked about stackable financing. Every single state incentive that we have today can be layered with opportunity zones. So restoration tax abatement was a natural fit, but for those and thinking about economic development district and trying to attract jobs and not just investment in land and buildings, think about the angel investor tax credit, the R&D tax credit, enterprise zones,
quality jobs. Those are popular state incentives that can be layered in with these projects that you're trying to attract. And then, and what we also think we're going to see, because the LED, again, is launching an online opportunity exchange, the place where we hope to facilitate connections between folks working projects and investors looking for places to place their money, their investment, their capital gains. That's going to launch on August the 12th, and we're going to make a big hoorah about it. But in addition to that, if you want to get some good advice on how to actually go about implementing opportunity zones, LED is partnered up with KPMG. We are hosting a series of workshops that are geared towards local and community developers and planners, and also investors and elected leaders as well. That's August 13th in Ruston, 14th in Alexandria, and 15th in Baton Rouge. We kind of went straight down the middle of the state trying to capture as many folks as we possibly can. But you're going to hear a lot of nuts and bolts and possibly in the weeds a little bit more on opportunity zones at those workshops. But we expect individuals with opportunity funds to connect with us through that opportunity exchange, and we'll highlight every region's prospectus there as well. That's why we're encouraging regions and communities to go ahead and make that investment. And thanks to the Delta Regional Authority for supporting communities in that way. So,
Thank you.
I think we have time for
Did
just
that
one
help?
more question.
So just something as a kind of a business person's feedback for the state in particular, and this is a bit novel, but it might be something to think about. Aggregation of capital is highly regulated, especially when you get to numerous persons that you're aggregating it from. But every state has what's called an intra-state exemption, where if the capital is raised only in the state for a state project or a state company, it doesn't have to go through federal approval. One thing that you might consider at the governor's office is creating a specialized state exemption for community qualified opportunity fund capital raising, maybe even create a standardized form of prospectus, and have a very accelerated approval process. Because the thing that this needs is capital aggregation. And so that would help people like John and others who are raising the capital, and they're local projects that local people care about and locally driven.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Bob. One more. We got one more right here. Thank you, Chad.
So, Mr. Turner, I'm learning a lot today, and I appreciate the opportunity. I heard Dr. Fleming speak earlier about directing companies towards proper grants. I also heard Mr. Petty make reference to extra points on grant applications, et cetera. I'm not sure if there's a direct fit, but my company's applied to SBIR grant opportunities. Would I be able to obtain any help from the council and certainly obtain extra points if they're available on said applications?
Let me adjust. I don't want to mislead anybody. We don't make grants to private companies.
Okay.
We make grants to foundations, nonprofits, colleges, but they in turn, those grants are used in such a way as to either lay the foundation for private companies, if there's an obstacle there.
Okay.
Or we also have a revolving loan fund program where they in turn lend the money. So those are the options when it comes to
And from a HUD perspective, that's just only for our grant programs. Obviously, we don't dictate to other federal agencies as far as their grant programs, but that is a work stream that's come out of the Opportunity Council, is to identify where we can step up at the agency level all across the federal government and help incentivize this. So we've looked at HUD's portfolio and the programs that we're in, and we've attached where appropriate. But I couldn't tell you. I'm sure we can all work together and find out.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what every other agency's doing, but I know
we
in
can
HUD
help
we're.
you. Just when we get done, give me whatever information you have and what you're looking for, and we can look on the council and see what's the best vehicle for you.
Absolutely.
That SBIR, SDTR is perfect for what both universities and what we're trying to do.
because it's not a new funding.
Right.
So to have that, expedite that, an opportunity to be a wonderful opportunity.
Perfect, yeah, if y'all give me that information, that'll be perfect, okay? We'll share contact information. Yes.
Small business innovation of all the time.
SBA.
So you can get up to a 30% R&D tax credit from the state today. So
Hey.
And certainly SBA is also one of the.
Right, they're part of the
17
council.
work streams.
Yeah, SBA is part of the council.
SBA would be a real good choice.
So I understand that Dr. Carson is chair of HUD, and I'm not a direct fit for HUD, but I'll tell you, if anyone's going to understand exactly what we're doing, how we're cooling, selectively cooling the brain post-cardiac arrest, it would be him.
You think?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Take that visibility from him.
Yeah.
How do I say, the advocacy to push this initiative of growing a company that will help save lives right here in Lafayette.
I can help you. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing too. That's pretty phenomenal. All right.
So with that, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank everybody.
This series of forums will be available on YouTube for the AOC's YouTube channel. So all you can log on and we'll put a link on our website.
Okay.
Thank y'all.